They say when you drown, your life flashes before your eyes. But when Lee Min-ho went under the Han River on Christmas Eve, he didn't see his past. He saw nothing. And that's exactly what he wanted. The water was colder than he expected. It hit his lungs like knives, sharp and unforgiving, pulling him down into the darkness. Above him, the bridge lights blurred into nothing. Below him, the river had no bottom. Just endless black. His body screamed for air, but his mind was finally quiet. No more voices. No more memories. No more pain. 28 years of breathing, and this was the first moment he'd felt peace. But then something grabbed him. Strong hands wrapped around his torso, pulling him upward through the water. He tried to fight it, tried to sink deeper, but whoever had him wouldn't let go. They were fast. Impossibly fast. Like they'd been born in the water. They broke the surface and Minho's lungs betrayed him, gasping for air he didn't want. Someone dragged him onto the concrete shore, their breathing hard and desperate beside him. Sir, can you hear me? A woman's voice. English, not Korean. Accent he didn't recognize. Come on, breathe. He felt hands on his chest. Pounding. Hard. Then lips on his. Breathing air into his dead lungs. He wanted to tell her to stop, to let him go back under. But his body wouldn't obey. His chest convulsed and water poured out of his mouth. Yes, that's it. Stay with me. His eyes finally opened. And there she was. Dark skin. Wet braided locks plastered to her face. Brown eyes wide with fear and determination. Water dripping from her onto him. She looked like she'd just pulled him out of hell itself. Maybe she had. Thank God, she whispered, and her hand touched his face. Her fingers were gentle despite everything. You're okay. You're going to be okay. Minho's hand moved on its own, reaching up to touch her cheek. His vision was blurry, but he could see her clearly somehow. Like she was the only real thing in the world. Chonsa, he whispered in Korean. Angel? I don't understand, she said, keeping her hand on his shoulder. But you're safe now. The ambulance is coming. Just hold on. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Red and blue lights reflected off the water. Minho tried to sit up, but his body was too heavy. The woman held his hand as the paramedics rushed over, and he gripped it like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, his fingers slowly slipped from hers. He watched her face disappear into the crowd of police and emergency workers, and for the first time since he'd climbed onto that bridge, he felt something other than emptiness. He felt loss. The hospital was chaos. Minho woke up to fluorescent lights and the sound of arguing voices outside his room. Through the window in the door, he could see at least 20 men in black suits filling the corridor. His men. Behind them, police officers tried to push through. Camera flashes lit up the hallway like lightning. The door opened and Kong walked in. His second in command, loyal for 10 years, had a fresh cut above his eyebrow and looked like he hadn't slept. Boss Kong said quietly, closing the door behind him. The whole city thinks you were attacked. The media is calling it an assassination attempt. Minho stared at the ceiling. Let them think that. The police want a statement. They want to know who tried to kill you. No one tried to kill me. Kong stepped closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Then what happened on that bridge? Minho closed his eyes. He could still feel the cold water filling his lungs. Could still see her face appearing above him in the darkness like a vision. Find her, he said. Who? The woman who pulled me out. Minho opened his eyes and looked at Kong. Find her. I don't care what it takes. Search every apartment in Seoul if you have to. Find her and bring her to me. Kong nodded slowly. The media already identified her. Aisha Graham. Nigerian. 26 years old. Olympic swimmer. Competed last year. Came in 4th place. She's been living in Seoul for 18 months, coaching at a community pool in Mapo. Aisha. Minho repeated. The name felt foreign on his tongue, but somehow right. Is she hurt? No. She went home after giving the police a statement. But boss. Kong hesitated. The news is everywhere. Your face and hers. Everyone in Seoul knows she saved you. If our enemies think you care about her, they'll... I know. Minho sat up, ignoring the pain in his chest. Put a protection detail on her. 24 hours. She doesn't leave her apartment without eyes on her. She'll notice. I don't care. Do it. Kong left and Minho reached for the TV remote. Every channel was showing the same footage. A helicopter shot of the bridge. Police lights. And a photo of her. Aisha Graham. She was smiling in the picture, wearing athletic gear with a medal around her neck. 4th place at the Olympics. She'd been so close to winning. He wondered if she felt like a failure. He wondered if that's why she'd been out running at midnight on Christmas Eve. If she'd been trying to outrun her own demons the same way he'd been trying to drown his. The reporter's voice cut through his thoughts. Authorities are still investigating whether this was a targeted attack on the billionaire or a suicide attempt. Lee Min-ho's representatives have declined to comment. Min-ho turned off the TV. His chest hurt where she'd performed CPR, where her hands had literally restarted his heart. He touched the spot and felt the bruising beneath his hospital gown. She'd saved him, and she had no idea what that meant. What it would cost her. 3 days passed before Kong brought her to him. Min-ho had refused all visitors except his second-in-command. He'd refused to eat, refused to speak to the doctors, refused to even acknowledge the stack of newspapers on his bedside table with his face on the front page. But when Kong knocked on the door and said, "She's here, boss," Min-ho sat up straighter than he had in days. Aisha walked in carrying plastic containers of food. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her locks pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired, the kind of tired that came from too many cameras and questions. She set the food on the table and turned to face him. Their eyes met and Min-ho felt that same jolt he'd felt on the river shore. Like recognition. Like he'd known her before this life. "Your man said you weren't eating," she said in English. Her voice was softer than he remembered. "So I brought you something." Min-ho's English was rough but functional. "You not have to do this." "I know." She opened one of the containers. The smell of spices and home-cooked food filled the room. "But I was cooking anyway. Nigerian stir-fry spaghetti. My mother's recipe." She held out a container and fork to him. Min-ho took it slowly, their fingers brushing. He looked down at the food. It was simple. Pasta with vegetables and chicken. Nothing fancy. But the smell alone made his throat tight. He took a bite. The taste hit him immediately. Garlic. Ginger. Something sweet and spicy. But underneath all of that was something else. Something that reminded him of the way his grandmother used to cook. Before the cancer took her appetite. Before she'd gotten too weak to stand at the stove. Min-ho's vision blurred and he realized he was crying. He set down the fork quickly, turning his face away from Aisha. But she'd already seen. She was quiet for a moment, then pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. "My grandmother," he managed to say. "She cooked like this. Before she died." "When?" Aisha asked gently. "Last week." The words came out broken. Same day you saved me." Aisha was quiet. Then she said, "I'm sorry." Min-ho wiped his face roughly. "Why you pull me out?" "Because I had to. Most people would walk away. Call police. Not jump in river." Aisha looked down at her hands. "My sister drowned when I was 16. Pool accident at her school. I was at Olympic training camp 3 hours away. By the time I got the call and made it back, she was already gone." Her voice cracked. "I spent 6 years training to swim faster. To be faster. And I still couldn't save her." Min-ho stared at her. "So when you see me jump." "I just reacted. I didn't think. I just knew I couldn't watch someone else die in water. Not when I could do something about it." She finally looked up at him. "Even if it was a stranger who wanted to die." "How you know I want to die?" "Because I know what that looks like. My dad almost succeeded twice after my sister died." I recognized the look. They sat in silence. Min-ho picked up the fork again and took another bite. Then another. Aisha watched him eat with something like relief on her face. "Why press the truth." Min-ho asked between bites. "You could make money. Fame. Tell everyone I try to kill myself." "Because it's not my story to tell," she said simply. "That's your pain. Your life. I'm not going to profit off it. Everyone else would. I'm not everyone else." Min-ho finished the entire container. It was the first real food he'd eaten since his grandmother's funeral. When he was done, Aisha stood to leave. "Wait," he said. She turned back. "You in danger now," he said. "Because you saved me. People who want hurt me, they see the news. They see you. They will come. Then I'll deal with it." "No." Min-ho's voice hardened. "You don't understand. I am not good man. I run things in Seoul that police pretend not to see. I kill people. I destroy people. Everyone who gets close to me dies. My mother. My father. My uncle. My grandmother. Everyone." His hands were shaking. "You should know, come here again. You should forget you saved me." Aisha walked back to the bed and looked him directly in the eyes. "Everyone's dangerous when they're in pain. The food is a gift, not a transaction. Eat it. Sleep. And whatever you were running from on that bridge, try running toward it instead. That's what my sister would have wanted for our dad. She left before he could respond. Minho sat alone in the hospital room, staring at the empty food container. He could still smell the spices, could still taste the memory of his grandmother's cooking, could still feel Aisha's hand on his face by the river. For the first time in a week, he didn't want to die. He picked up his phone and called Kong. Put 50 men on her, he said. I want eyes on her every second of every day. She goes nowhere without protection. Boss, she made it clear she doesn't want. I don't care what she wants. The people who hurt me will come for her. And when they do, I want our men there first. He hung up and lay back in the bed. Through the window, he could see Seoul's skyline lit up with Christmas decorations. A city he'd controlled for a decade. A city where he'd built an empire on blood and fear. And now there was one person in it who looked at him and didn't see a monster. He had to keep her alive, even if it meant protecting her from himself. 2 months passed and Aisha never saw Lee Min-ho again. But she felt him everywhere. The groceries that appeared at her door every week with no return address. The rent on her apartment that was mysteriously paid 3 months in advance. The new equipment at the community pool where she coached, donated anonymously. Even the 3 men who'd tried to corner her in an alley one night, only to be pulled into the shadows by people she never saw clearly. She wasn't stupid. She knew it was him. It was a Tuesday night when Aisha finally decided she'd had enough. She left the pool after her last class, walked to her apartment building, and stood on the street looking up at the office building across from hers. Top floor. Every light off except one. She could feel someone watching. Aisha raised her hand and waved at the window. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the light turned off. She smiled despite herself and went inside. She'd just stepped into her apartment when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a man's voice, rough with emotion. Why you wave at me? Min-ho. Because I knew you were there, Aisha said, setting down her bag. You've been following me for 2 months. The groceries. The rent. The men who saved me from those guys in the alley. Silence. I'm not mad, she continued. I'm just tired of pretending I don't notice. If you want to talk to me, then talk to me. Stop hiding. I'm not good for you. You've said that before. I'm still here. You don't understand what kind of man I am. Then tell me. More silence. Then he hung up. Aisha stood in her dark apartment, phone still pressed to her ear. She should feel scared. She should feel angry. But all she felt was sad. Sad for this man who'd tried to die in a river and now couldn't figure out how to live. That night, she couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, she gave up and went out onto her balcony for air. He was standing on the street below. Lee Min-ho, billionaire and reportedly Seoul's most dangerous man, stood on the sidewalk in jeans and a black hoodie, looking up at her building like a teenager who couldn't work up the courage to knock on a door. Aisha's breath caught. Even from 5 stories up, she could see how different he looked from the hospital. Thinner. Exhausted. Like he hadn't slept since Christmas. They stared at each other. Neither moved. Then it started to rain. Soft at first, then harder. Min-ho didn't move. Just stood there getting soaked, his eyes never leaving hers. Aisha made a decision. She went downstairs. When she opened the building's front door, he was still standing there. Water ran down his face, plastered his hair to his forehead. He looked half drowned already, like he was back in the river. You'll catch a cold, she said. I dream about the water, he said. His voice was raw. Every night. I'm drowning. But in the dream, you don't save me. You drown too. Because of me. I'm a good swimmer. Everyone around me dies, Aisha. It was the first time he'd said her name. The way his accent wrapped around the syllables made her chest tighten. My mother died when I was 10, he continued. Rain poured down between them. In my arms. She had cancer. My father couldn't live without her. He died 3 days later. Heart attack. Everyone said it was broken heart. His voice cracked. My uncle raised me. Taught me this business. When I was 18, someone shot at me. He took the bullet. I held him while he died too. Min-ho. My grandmother was only family I had left. She got sick last year. I paid for best doctors. Best hospital. Nothing worked. She died the same day I tried to. The same day you pulled me out. He was shaking now. Everyone I love dies. Everyone I touch dies. So I try to die first. But then you save me. And now I can't stop thinking, what if I touch you and you die too? Aisha stepped out into the rain. The water was cold, but she barely felt it. She walked right up to him until they were close enough to touch. I know you save people who give up, Minho said. I know you cry when you think no one is watching. I know you call your mother every Sunday at 2 p.m. I know you're still afraid of water, but you coach swimming anyway because you want to save other kids the way you couldn't save your sister. I know, his voice broke completely. I know you're only person in this whole city who looks at me and doesn't see monster. Then stop hiding from me, Aisha said quietly. Stop sending gifts and protection and watching from windows. If you want to know me, then know me. But stop treating me like I'm made of glass. What if I break you anyway? Then I'll put myself back together. I've done it before. Minho reached out slowly, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he moved too fast. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away rain or maybe tears. She couldn't tell anymore. I want to live, he whispered. For first time in 10 years, I want to live. Because of you. Then live. He kissed her in the rain and Aisha felt something shift in her chest. Like a door opening. Like breathing after holding your breath too long. His hands were gentle despite the calluses. His lips tasted like rain and something desperate and hungry. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Aisha took his hand. Come upstairs, she said. You're soaking wet and you look like you haven't slept in a week. I haven't. Then sleep. I'll make coffee. And we'll talk. Like normal people. Minho laughed. It sounded rusty, like he hadn't done it in a long time. I'm not a normal person. Neither am I. Come on. She pulled him inside and upstairs to her apartment. It was small. One bedroom, cramped kitchen, bathroom with a shower that barely worked. Nothing like what he was probably used to. But Minho looked around like he'd stepped into a palace. This is first time I've been in someone's home in 5 years, he said quietly. I forget what it feels like. To be in place that feels like home. Aisha handed him a towel. Well, welcome. Bathroom's there if you want to dry off. I'll put on coffee. While he was in the bathroom, she made strong coffee and pulled out the leftovers from dinner. More of her mother's cooking. When he came back out, hair towel-dried and looking slightly more human, she'd set 2 plates on her tiny kitchen table. They ate in comfortable silence. Then Minho started talking. He told her about his childhood. About watching his mother waste away. About his father's heart giving out from grief. About his uncle teaching him the family business, which was really just a polite word for organized crime. About taking his first life at 19. About building an empire before he was 25. About realizing at 28 that he had everything and nothing. My grandmother, she always say to me, Minho, money can't keep you warm at night, he said. I never understand what she mean. But standing on that bridge, I finally got it. I had billions of one. I had power. I had respect. But I had no one to come home to. No one who cared if I lived or died. So I decided to stop pretending it mattered. And now, Aisha asked, now I think maybe my grandmother sent you. To give me one more chance. I don't believe in signs from the dead. Neither did I. He looked at her across the table. But then you appeared in that water like angel. And my grandmother used to make food that tastes exactly like yours. And you have same look in your eyes she had. Like you see good in people even when they can't see it themselves. Aisha reached across and took his hand. I'm not a saint, Minho. I'm just someone who knows what it's like to lose people. To feel like you failed them. But I'm here. I'm alive. And right now, so are you. They talked until the sun came up. About her sister. About his family. About Olympic dreams that fell short and business empires built on blood. About fear and grief and what it meant to keep breathing when everything hurt. When Minho finally left as dawn broke over Seoul, he kissed her forehead at the door. Thank you, he said. For what? For letting me be human. Just for tonight. Aisha watched him leave, flanked by the 2 men who'd been waiting downstairs. Kong, his second-in-command who she'd met briefly, gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. She closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. What was she doing? Getting involved with a man who admitted to killing people? Who ran criminal operations across Seoul? Who was so broken he tried to die? But when she closed her eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw a man standing in the rain, crying about everyone he'd lost. A man who'd spent 2 months protecting her from the shadows. A man who ate her mother's cooking and cried because it reminded him of his grandmother. She saw someone who needed saving just as much as she did. Over the next 3 weeks, Minho came to her apartment 4 more times. Always late at night. Always looking like he'd been fighting sleep for days. They'd eat together, talk, and sometimes just sit in silence while Aisha worked on lesson plans for her swimming classes. He never tried to kiss her again. Never pushed for more than she offered. He seemed content just to exist in her space, like a stray cat that had finally found a warm home. But Aisha could feel the tension building between them. The way his eyes followed her around the room. The way her breath caught when their hands accidentally touched. The way they both leaned closer during conversations until barely any space remained between them. It was a Saturday night when everything changed. Minho showed up at her door at 11 p.m., looking more exhausted than usual. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. His hands shook slightly when he took the coffee mug she offered. "What happened?" Aisha asked. "Rival family tried to move on my territory and Itty won. Had to handle it." "Handle it how?" He met her eyes. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, I need to know who you are. All of you." Minho set down his mug. "I killed 3 men tonight. Shot them myself. They were trying to take over one of my businesses. I gave them warning. They didn't listen. So I killed them." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was describing a business transaction. "Does that scare you?" Aisha's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Did they have families?" "Yes." "Children?" "2 of them, yes." She closed her eyes. Thought about those children who would grow up without fathers. Thought about Minho growing up without parents. Thought about the cycle of violence that just kept spinning. "I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't bother me," she said finally. "Because it does. But I also know you're trying to survive in a world that taught you violence was the only language. And I know that under all of that, you're just a man who's terrified of being alone. You should tell me to leave. You should call police." "Probably." Aisha opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked at him. "But I'm not going to." "Why not?" "Because 2 months ago, I watched you try to die. And every time you come here, I see you trying to live. That has to count for something." Minho stood up abruptly and crossed to her. Before she could react, he pulled her into his arms and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. She could feel him shaking. "I don't deserve you," he whispered into her hair. "Maybe not. But you've got me anyway." He pulled back just enough to look at her face. "If I kiss you again, I won't want to stop." "Then don't stop." This time when he kissed her, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry, and full of 2 months of wanting. Aisha kissed him back just as hard, her hands fisting in his shirt. They barely made it to her bedroom. Afterward, lying tangled in her sheets with Seoul city lights filtering through the window, Minho traced patterns on her shoulder. "I'm in love with you," he said quietly. "I think I have been since you pulled me out of that river." "Is that crazy?" "Probably," Aisha said. "I think I'm in love with you too." "Which is definitely crazy." "We're both crazy then." "Yeah." She turned to face him. "But I'd rather be crazy with you than sane alone." Minho kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "I'll try to be better. For you. I'll try to be the man you see when you look at me. Just be you. That's enough." They fell asleep wrapped around each other as the sun started to rise over Seoul. For the first time since Christmas Eve, Minho slept without nightmares of drowning, and Aisha slept without dreaming of her sister. 9 weeks later, Aisha stared at the pregnancy test in her bathroom with shaking hands. Positive. She sat down on the closed toilet lid, trying to process what this meant. She and Minho had been careful most of the time, but not always. There'd been nights when careful was the last thing on either of their minds. Pregnant. She was pregnant with the child of Seoul's most dangerous man. Her phone buzzed. A text from Minho. "Good morning, beautiful. I'm making breakfast at my place. Come over?" Over the past 2 months, their relationship had shifted from stolen nights at her apartment to her spending weekends at his penthouse. She'd met more of his men, had learned the codes and protocols that came with dating someone who had enemies, had gotten used to the constant presence of bodyguards whenever she left her apartment. She'd also seen Minho change. He smiled more, laughed more. He'd started teaching her Korean while she taught him how to swim properly, helping him overcome his fear of deep water. They'd cooked together, watched movies, done normal couple things in between his not-so-normal business dealings. And now she was carrying his baby. Aisha typed back, "I need to tell you something. I'm coming over now." She was halfway through getting dressed when she heard the crash. It came from downstairs. Loud. Followed by shouting. Aisha's blood went cold. She grabbed her phone to call Minho, but before she could dial, her apartment door exploded inward. 4 men in masks burst in. Aisha screamed and ran for the bedroom. but one of them caught her. She fought, using every bit of her athletic training. She got one good punch in, felt someone's nose crack under her fist. But there were too many of them. A bag went over her head. Zip ties cut into her wrists. She felt herself being lifted and carried. Minho. She screamed. Nho. The last thing she heard before a cloth covered her mouth was one of the men speaking in Korean on the phone. We have her. Lee Minho's woman. He'll give us everything now. Then the chemical smell from the cloth pulled her into darkness. Minho was in his kitchen, preparing japchae the way Aisha liked it, when his phone rang. Not his regular phone. His emergency line. The one only Kong and his top men had access to. He answered immediately. What? Boss. Kang's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Aisha's apartment. 3 of our men are dead. She's gone. The phone slipped from Minho's hand and clattered on the marble counter. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only hear Kang's words echoing. She's gone. She's gone. She's gone. His mind flashed back to the river. To her face appearing above him in the water. To her hands on his chest, breathing life back into his lungs. To last night, when she'd fallen asleep in his arms after laughing at his terrible attempt to pronounce a Nigerian phrase she'd been teaching him. She's gone. Minho's hand shot out and grabbed the phone. Where? We don't know yet. It happened less than 10 minutes ago. The building's security cameras were disabled. No witnesses. But Boss Kong hesitated. One of our men is still alive. Barely. He said there were 4 attackers. Professional. They knew exactly where our guys were positioned. Inside job? Maybe. Or someone's been watching us for weeks. Minho's mind was already working, pushing through the panic. If someone had been watching, they knew about Aisha. Knew what she meant to him. Knew that he'd burn the world down to get her back. Which meant this was either about ransom, or this was a trap to draw him out. He didn't care which. Call everyone, Minho said, his voice deadly calm. Every family we have connections with. Every rival organization. Every informant on our payroll. I want to know who took her within the hour. And Kong? Yes, boss? If we don't have answers in an hour, we start burning down everything until someone talks. He hung up and stood in his kitchen, surrounded by the breakfast he'd been making for her. The japchae sat half-finished on the cutting board. Her favorite coffee mug was on the counter. One of her hair ties was on his bathroom sink where she'd left it last night. Minho picked up his phone and looked at their last messages. Her text, I need to tell you something. What had she needed to say? What had been so important that she was coming over first thing in the morning? It didn't matter now. All that mattered was finding her. He grabbed his gun from the safe in his bedroom and called his driver. Seoul was about to learn what happened when someone touched what belonged to Lee Minho. The first place they hit was the Myeongdong district, a gambling den run by the Park family, one of Minho's smaller rivals. Minho walked in with 30 men and didn't bother with pleasantries. Where is she? He asked Park Jinwoo, the family head. Where is who? Park was playing poker with 3 other men. He barely looked up. Minho shot the man sitting to Park's right. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. The body slumped forward onto the poker table, blood spreading across the cards. I ask one more time, Minho said calmly. Where is Aisha Graham? Park's face had gone white. I don't know. I swear. We had nothing to do with. Minho shot the man on Park's left. Boss. Park scrambled out of his chair, hands up. I swear on my ancestors, we don't have her. We wouldn't be that stupid. Minho studied his face. Park was terrified, which meant he was probably telling the truth. He was also too small time for something this coordinated. If you hear anything, Minho said, you call me immediately. Understand? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Minho and his men left. Behind them, Park was screaming for someone to call a doctor. The next stop was 81, a drug warehouse owned by the Choi organization. Minho's men surrounded the building while he walked in the front door. Lee Minho, the warehouse manager, said nervously, This is unexpected. What can we? Someone took my woman this morning. I want to know if it was you. No. We would never. The Choi family respects our territory agreements. Minho wasn't listening. He nodded to Kong, who immediately started searching the warehouse. They tore through everything, opened every container, checked every room, questioned every worker. Nothing. Burn it, Minho said. What? The manager's eyes went wide. But our merchandise. I don't care about your merchandise. Burn everything. If the Choi family isn't involved, consider this motivation to help me find who is. They lit the warehouse on fire on their way out. $5 million worth of product went up in flames. Minho watched the smoke rise into the Seoul sky and felt nothing. 3 hours in, and he was no closer to finding Aisha. His phone rang. Gung. Boss, we have something. One of our informants says a warehouse in Bucheon has been active the last few days. New security. Lots of supplies going in. It's owned by a shell company, but we traced it back to Choi Sang-woo. The Busan boss? Yes. He's been trying to expand into Seoul for years. You've blocked him every time. Minho's jaw tightened. Choi Sang-woo. A man with enough resources and motivation to plan something like this. A man who'd lost territory and profit because of Minho's control over Seoul. Address, Minho said. Kong sent it immediately. Minho was already in his car, his driver speeding toward Bucheon before Kong finished talking. If Choi had Aisha, this was a trap. He knew Minho would come. He was probably counting on it. Minho didn't care. He called his men and gave orders. They'd approach from all sides. Snipers on the surrounding buildings. Heavy weapons. Overwhelming force. But he would walk in first. Alone. Because if this was a trap, he wanted Choi's men focused on him. Not on Aisha. Aisha woke up to the sound of shouting. Her head pounded from whatever drug they'd used. The bag was still over her head, but she could feel that she was sitting on the ground, her back against a concrete pillar. Her hands were zip-tied behind her around the pillar. How long? A man's voice. Speaking Korean. 3 hours now. A different voice. Lee Min-ho has already destroyed 2 of our rivals' operations. The whole city is talking about it. Good. Let him rage. Let everyone see. When we kill him tonight, his empire will crumble. Aisha's blood ran cold. This wasn't about ransom. This was about killing Minho. She was bait. What about the girl? The second voice asked. Kill her after. Make it look like collateral damage. No. No. Aisha struggled against the zip ties, but they were too tight. She tried to scream, but there was tape over her mouth under the bag. She had to warn Minho. Had to find a way to tell him this was a trap. But she was helpless. Bound and gagged and waiting to be used as bait to kill the man she loved. The man who didn't even know he was going to be a father. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. She thought about the positive pregnancy test sitting on her bathroom counter. Thought about Minho making breakfast for her this morning, not knowing their lives were about to change forever. She had to survive this. They both did. She started working on the zip ties, twisting her wrists despite the pain. If she could just get one hand free. Boss, he's here. One of the men spoke urgently. Lee Min-ho just pulled up outside. Alone? Looks like it. A laugh. Perfect. Get into positions. When he comes through that door, light him up. No speeches. No dramatic reveals. Just kill him. Aisha's heart hammered. She screamed through the tape, but the sound was muffled. She thrashed against the pillar, but the ties held firm. Minho was walking into a death trap, and she couldn't do anything to stop it. The warehouse door opened. Through the bag over her head, Aisha saw light change. Heard footsteps. Let her go. Minho's voice. Come. Deadly. Take me instead. She's innocent. Nothing is innocent in this business. Lee Min-ho. That was Choi. Aisha could hear him moving. You destroyed my operations in Busan. Cost me billions. Killed my nephew. All to maintain your control over Seoul. And now you think killing me makes you strong? You think Seoul will accept new leadership? They'll tear you apart. Let them try. The moment you die, chaos comes. And in chaos, there's opportunity. I give you 3 seconds to let her go. Choi laughed. Or what? You're alone. Unarmed. Aisha couldn't see, but she could feel the tension. Could sense Minho calculating. Could practically hear his heartbeat matching hers, even from across the warehouse. 2, Minho said. Kill him, Choi ordered. 1. Then the world exploded. Gunfire erupted from everywhere. The warehouse walls, the ceiling, the floor. Minho's men breached from every angle simultaneously. Lights shuddered. Men screamed. Aisha felt herself being pulled backward by someone, the pillar she was tied to scraping across the concrete. Through the chaos, she heard Minho shouting her name. Someone cut her zip ties. Ripped the bag off her head. It was Kong. Stay down. He yelled, covering her body with his as bullets flew overhead. Aisha saw Minho across the warehouse, fighting his way toward her through the smoke and gunfire. He was taking hits. She saw blood blossom on his shoulder, his side. But he didn't stop. He just kept coming, his face a mask of desperate determination. A massive explosion shook the building. Part of the roof collapsed. Fire spread along the walls. Minho reached her. His hands were shaking as he touched her face, checking her for injuries. Blood from his shoulder wound dripped onto her shirt, but she barely noticed. "Are you hurt?" he asked frantically. "Did they hurt you?" "Minho, you're bleeding." "I don't care. Tell me you're okay." "I'm okay. But you." He collapsed. Just dropped to his knees beside her, his hand pressed to the wound in his side. He'd been shot at least twice that she could see. "We need to get you out of here." Aisha tried to pull him up, but he was too heavy. "Gung. Help me." Kong appeared, along with two other men. They started to lift Minho, but he grabbed Aisha's hand, holding on tight. "Don't let go," he said. His voice was weak. "Please." "I won't. I promise." They carried him outside into the rain. Police were everywhere. So were news helicopters. Half of Seoul seemed to be on fire in the distance, aftermath of Minho's rampage looking for her. An ambulance rushed over. Paramedics swarmed Minho, but he wouldn't let go of Aisha's hand, even as they tried to load him onto the stretcher. "Sir, we need to stop the bleeding." "She stays with me," Minho said. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. He'd been hit worse than she'd realized. "She stays or I don't go." "Let me come," Aisha said to the paramedics. "Please." They nodded and helped her into the ambulance. As soon as the doors closed, Minho's grip on her hand finally relaxed. His eyes were starting to close. "Stay awake," Aisha begged. "Please, Minho. Stay with me." "Tired," he mumbled. "So tired." "I know. But you have to stay awake. I need to tell you something. Something important." His eyes flickered open. "What?" Aisha looked at his pale face, the blood soaking through the bandages the paramedics were desperately applying, the heart monitor that was beeping too fast and too irregular. She thought about the pregnancy test, about the baby growing inside her that he didn't know about yet. And she couldn't tell him. Not now. Not when he might not survive. "I love you," she said instead. "That's what I needed to tell you this morning." "I love you." Minho smiled. Blood stained his teeth. "I love you too." "Worth it." Burning soul. "Worth it to save you." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." His hand squeezed hers weakly. "You're my whole world, Aisha. My reason for living. When you pulled me from that river, you saved more than my life. You saved my soul." The ambulance screeched to a halt at the hospital. Doctors and nurses flooded in, pulling Minho away from her. She tried to follow, but someone held her back. "Ma'am, you need to let them work." "No. Let me go." "NHO." She watched them wheel him through doors she couldn't pass. Watched his hand fall limp off the edge of the gurney. Watched the blood drip onto the hospital floor like rain. Aisha stood alone in the hallway, clothes soaked with his blood, her hand still warm from where he'd held it. And then she felt it. A strange flutter in her abdomen. Subtle. Like a whisper. "There, baby." Reminding her that she had to stay strong. For both of them. She put her hand over her stomach and whispered, "Your father better survive this. He doesn't get to miss meeting you." The surgery lasted 6 hours. Aisha sat in the waiting room, refusing to leave even when the nurses offered her a bed. Kong stayed with her, both of them silent. The television in the corner played news coverage on a loop. Seoul in chaos, fires across multiple districts, 47 people dead, and in the center of it all, a grainy security photo of Lee Min-ho carrying an unconscious Aisha Graham out of a warehouse as the building burned behind them. "Seoul's most dangerous man wages war for love," one headline read. "Billionaire Mafia boss destroys half the city searching for kidnapped girlfriend," said another. Aisha barely saw any of it. She just kept replaying the moment when Minho collapsed. The blood. The way his eyes had struggled to stay open. The fear that she might lose him after finally finding him. "Miss Graham?" A doctor appeared in the doorway. "Lee Min-ho is out of surgery." Aisha jumped to her feet. "Is he?" "He's alive. Critical but stable. He was shot twice. Once in the shoulder, once just below the ribs. The second bullet caused significant internal bleeding, but we were able to repair the damage. He'll need several weeks of recovery, but he should make a full recovery." Aisha's knees gave out. Kong caught her before she hit the floor. "Can I see him?" she asked. "He's still unconscious from the anesthesia. But yes, you can sit with him." The doctor led her to a private room. Minho lay in the bed, pale and still, connected to what seemed like a dozen machines. His chest rose and fell steadily, the heart monitor beeping a calm rhythm. Aisha pulled a chair close and took his hand. "You better wake up," she whispered. "We have a lot to talk about." She must have fallen asleep holding his hand because the next thing she knew, it was dark outside and someone was squeezing her fingers gently. Aisha. Her eyes flew open. Minho was awake, looking at her with those dark eyes that had first seen her as an angel in the water. "Hi," she said, tears immediately filling her eyes. "You scared the hell out of me." "Sorry." His voice was rough from the breathing tube. "Worth it, though." "What's worth almost dying?" "Saving you." He tried to sit up and immediately grimaced. "What happened? Did we get them all?" "I don't know. I've been here the whole time." As if summoned, Kong appeared in the doorway. "Boss, you're awake." "Report," Minho said, falling immediately back into business mode despite being in a hospital bed. "Choi Sang-woo is dead. Most of his men too. We have 3 in custody who are cooperating. The police are involved now, there's no way around it this time. They want statements. From both of you." Minho looked at Aisha. "Don't tell them I tried to kill myself. Tell them I was attacked on the bridge. You tried to help. That's all. Minho. Please. For me." Aisha nodded reluctantly. Over the next 2 weeks, while Minho recovered, the full extent of the chaos unfolded. 47 people dead across Seoul. 5 districts with significant property damage. Media had dubbed it the Valentine's Massacre, even though it happened weeks after Valentine's Day. The police couldn't arrest Minho, too much political protection, too many officials on his payroll, but they could pressure him. Investigations were opened. Assets frozen. The entire criminal underworld of Seoul was in upheaval. And through it all, Aisha visited him every day. She watched him go from pale and weak to slowly regaining his strength. She held his hand through the pain. She argued with him about his refusal to cooperate with police. But she didn't tell him about the baby. Not yet. Not until he was stronger. It was a Sunday morning when everything changed. Aisha arrived at the hospital to find detectives in Minho's room. "Charges pending," one of them was saying. "Multiple counts of murder, arson, destruction of property." "Self-defense," Minho said calmly. "They kidnapped my girlfriend." I responded. "By destroying half of Seoul? I was looking for her. If people got in my way, that's unfortunate." The detective noticed Aisha in the doorway. "Miss Graham, we need your statement as well." They questioned her for 2 hours. About the kidnapping, the warehouse, Minho's actions. Aisha told them everything except the parts that would get him convicted. She was careful. Strategic. She'd spent 2 weeks thinking about what to say. When they finally left, she went back to Minho's room. He was sitting up in bed, staring out the window at Seoul's skyline. "They're going to arrest me," he said quietly. "Maybe not today or tomorrow, but soon. You have lawyers. Lawyers can't fix this. I killed 47 people, Aisha. On camera. With witnesses. There's only so much money and political influence can do." He turned to look at her. "I'm going to prison." "No." Aisha shook her head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Minho reached for her hand. "But I have deal with prosecutor. I give them information. Names of corrupt officials. Evidence of other crimes. In exchange, reduced sentence." "How reduced?" 10 years. Maybe 8 with good behavior. 8 years. Aisha felt like she'd been punched. "That's not reduced. It's better than life," Minho said. "And it's what I deserve." Aisha wanted to argue. Wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that he'd only been protecting her, that the system was broken. But she could see it in his eyes. He'd already accepted it. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. "What?" Aisha took a deep breath. This wasn't how she'd wanted to do this. But time was running out. "That morning when I texted you. When I said I needed to tell you something important. I remember. I'm pregnant." The machines monitoring Minho's vital signs went crazy. His heart rate spiked. His eyes went wide. For a long moment, he just stared at her, mouth open. "Say that again," he finally whispered. "I'm pregnant. About 10 weeks. I found out the morning they took me." "You're..." Minho's hand moved to her stomach, trembling. "We're having baby?" "Yes." He started crying. Just completely broke down. Tears streaming down his face as his hands stayed pressed against her abdomen, where no signs of pregnancy were visible yet. "I'm going to be father," he said, voice choked with emotion. "Me. A father?" "Yes." but I'll be in prison. I'll miss everything. First words. First steps. I'll miss, his voice cracked. I'll miss my child growing up. Aisha was crying too now. I know. But Minho, you'll get out eventually. 8 years. Our child will be 8. You can still be their father. You can still. 8 years. Minho pulled her closer, careful of his injuries. You'll wait 8 years for me? What kind of question is that? A fair one. You could find someone else. Someone good. Someone safe. Someone who can actually be there for you and our baby. I don't want someone else. Aisha cupped his face. I want you. The you who stood in the rain and told me about everyone you lost. The you who learned to swim even though you were terrified because I asked you to. The you who burned down half of soul because you couldn't lose someone else you loved. I'm not good man, Aisha. Maybe not. But you're my man. And you're going to be our baby's father. So you better survive those 8 years. Because we're not going through this alone. I'll visit. I'll bring our child. I'll wait. And when you get out, we'll figure out the rest together. Minho kissed her then, desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you, he whispered. You've said that before. I'm still here. Promise me something. What? If baby is boy, don't name him after me. Give him fresh start. New name. Better name. And if it's a girl, then name her after your sister. The one you couldn't save. Minho's hand stayed on her stomach. Because you saved me. And now we get to save someone together. 3 months later, Aisha sat in a prison visiting room, 7 months pregnant, talking to Minho through plexiglass. He looked different. Prison haircut. Prison clothes. Thinner. But his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. Like he'd finally made peace with something. 8 years, the judge had said at sentencing. With possibility of parole after 6 if you continue to cooperate. Minho had cooperated. He'd given prosecutors everything. Names, locations, evidence. He'd dismantled his own criminal empire piece by piece in exchange for more time with his child. How's baby? He asked. Kicking constantly. I think we're having a soccer player. Boy or girl? I want it to be a surprise. Me too. Minho pressed his hand against the glass. Aisha matched it from her side, their palms separated by barriers neither could cross. Tell me about Nigeria. Your mother ready for grandchild? She's already knitting baby clothes. Hasn't stopped since I told her. And she wants to meet you. Eventually. She know what I did? She knows you killed 47 people to save me. She has mixed feelings. Minho laughed, but it was hollow. I would kill 47 more. I would kill everyone in Seoul if it meant keeping you safe. I know. That's what scares her. It should scare you too. It did. For a while. Aisha's hand stayed pressed to the glass. But then I remembered you're also the man who cried eating my mother's cooking because it reminded you of your grandmother. You're complicated. I've accepted that. They talked until visiting hours ended. As Aisha stood to leave, Minho called out to her. Wait. I want to see. See what? Your belly. Please. Just once. Aisha lifted her shirt enough for him to see her swollen abdomen. 7 months. Their baby growing inside her. Minho's eyes filled with tears as he stared through the glass at the life they'd created. Beautiful, he whispered. You're so beautiful. I'll bring them to see you, Aisha promised. As soon as they're born. I promise. Take care of yourself. Both of you. We will. You take care of you. 8 years. It stretched ahead of them like an ocean. But Aisha had pulled him out of the actual ocean once before. She could pull him through this too. She had to. For all 3 of them. 7 years and 11 months later, Lee Min-ho walked out of prison. He was 36 now. Gray threads in his hair that hadn't been there before. Leaner. Quieter. But when Kong picked him up at the gate, his old second-in-command smiled. You look good, boss. Don't call me that anymore. That man is dead. What should I call you? Just Min-ho. He looked at his old friend. Where is she? Han River Park. Where you think? The drive felt longer than 8 years. Minho's heart hammered the entire way. He'd seen Aisha every month for 8 years through prison glass. Had watched their child grow through photographs and brief visits where he couldn't touch, couldn't hold, could only look in love from a distance. But now he was free. And they were waiting for him at the place where this had all started. The park came into view. Min-ho saw her immediately. Aisha, sitting on a bench near the bridge where he'd jumped 8 years ago. Next to her sat a child with dark skin in his eyes, holding a sketchbook and drawing. Their child. His child. A person he'd never held, never touched, never been able to protect except from behind bars. The car stopped. Minho got out slowly, his legs shaking. The child looked up first. Those were his eyes staring back at him. His mother's eyes. Eyes he'd only seen in photographs from when his mother was young. "Mama," the child said in English with Aisha's accent. "Is that?" Aisha turned. Their eyes met across the distance. 8 years of monthly visits, weekly phone calls, thousands of letters. But nothing had prepared him for seeing her in person without barriers between them. She stood. The child jumped up too, clutching the sketchbook. Minho walked toward them, one step at a time, afraid if he moved too fast this would turn out to be another dream. But then the child ran to him. Just sprinted across the grass and crashed into his legs, wrapping small arms around him in a fierce hug. "You're my daddy," the child said. "Mama showed me pictures. I made you a drawing." Minho collapsed to his knees. He couldn't help it. His legs just gave out. He wrapped his arms around this small person, this miracle, and sobbed. 8 years of being strong. 8 years of surviving. 8 years of holding it together. All of it broke in that moment. "It's okay, Daddy," the child said, patting his head the way children do. "You're home now. Mama said you were coming home today." Aisha knelt beside them, her arms going around both. And there, by the river that had almost taken him, Lee Min-ho held his family for the first time. "I missed so much," he said through tears. "I missed everything." "You missed some things," Aisha corrected gently. "But you're here now. That's what matters." Their child pulled back and held up the sketchbook. "Look, I draw pictures of you and Mama. And this one is our house." Minho looked at the drawing. A house with 3 people standing in front of it, holding hands. Above them, a sun with a smile. "It's beautiful," he managed to say. "You're very talented. Mama says you learned to swim. Can you teach me?" "I'm scared of the water." Minho looked at Aisha, then down at their child. His child, who was afraid of water just like he had been. "Yes," he said. "I'll teach you. We'll learn together. All 3 of us." He stood, lifting the child easily. Aisha took his hand. And together, the 3 of them walked toward the water. Seoul's skyline rose behind them, rebuilt and beautiful. The city that had almost destroyed him. The city where he'd built an empire on blood. The city where he'd lost everything and found everything. The city where Aisha Graham had pulled him from the river and taught him that being saved was just the first step. The real miracle was learning how to stay saved. Learning how to live. Learning how to love and be loved in return. "Daddy?" their child asked. "Mama says you used to be very sad. Are you still sad?" Minho looked at Aisha, then at the child in his arms, then at the river where it had all begun. "No," he said honestly. "Not anymore." They reached the water's edge. The Han River reflected the afternoon sun, sparkling and clear. "Race you in," their child shouted, already pulling off shoes. Aisha laughed. "Slowly. We need to." But Minho was already following, pulling off his shirt. Aisha shook her head, smiling, and joined them. And there, in the same river where Lee Min-ho had once tried to die, he taught his child to swim. Aisha stayed close, ready to help, but mostly just watching the 2 of them together. Later, as the sun began to set, they sat on the shore. Their child fell asleep between them, exhausted from swimming. "What happens now?" Minho asked quietly. "Now." Aisha leaned her head on his shoulder. "Now we live. We open that swimming school you've been planning. We teach kids who are afraid of water. We make something good out of all that pain. Together? Together." Minho wrapped his arm around her, careful not to wake their child. 8 years in prison had taught him patience. Had taught him that some things were worth waiting for. Had taught him that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something better from the ashes. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting me drown. For saving me. For waiting. For believing I could be more than what I was." Aisha kissed his cheek. "You saved me too, you know. I'd spent 6 years trying to swim fast enough to outrun my grief. You taught me it's okay to slow down. To let someone in. To risk drowning if it means really living." They sat together as Seoul's lights began to twinkle on across the city. And in that moment, Lee Min-ho finally understood what his grandmother had meant all those years ago. Money couldn't keep you warm at night. But this could. Love could. Family could. A second chance could. The river flowed on beside them, eternal and unchanging. But they had changed. And that made all the difference. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. Drop a comment below and tell us what you thought about Minho and Aisha's journey. Would you wait 8 years for the person you love? And if this story moved you, give it a like. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the people who save us aren't the heroes we expect. Sometimes they're just someone brave enough to jump in when everyone else walks away.